Just want to welcome my mother. Nice to have you here. She's great. And welcome, obviously, to each and every one of you who's sitting here. So nice to be here in person, and to anyone who's joining us on Zoom, and to anyone. I know a lot of people have asked me for the recording, so it will be going out. So to anyone who is going to listen to this at any future point, welcome to you too. When I go into high schools and I teach emotional well-being in a classroom setting. Sometimes one of the things I do, and when I do that, I have a model robot that I take and I put it on the desk, and I have a remote, and I start moving around the robot forwards, backwards, side, and the girls are looking at me, and then I say to them, "Can I ask you, how powerful do you think this robot is?" So they say, "Well, not very, because it has no power of its own. If you tell it to go forward, it's going forward. If you tell it to go backwards, it's going backwards. It has no power of its own. You're holding all the power." And then I say to them that sometimes, innocently, without us even realizing it, we can start to allow ourselves as people to become that robot. We can allow ourselves to throw a remote outside of ourselves and say to other people or circumstances, if you're what I want you to be, I'll be okay. And as soon as you're in a certain type of mood, or plans change, or something happens outside that it wasn't according to my plan, I'm going to then react in a very prescriptive way. So what we want to do today, in the time that we have together, is think about how we can be people, not robots. How can we tune into our own power so that we're choosing how we want to respond to things, rather than just becoming reactive. When someone's in a bad mood, we just respond in an irritable way too. But on the other hand, we can be people, which means that we have an ability to be mindful, to be present, and to choose however it is that we want to respond from the inside out towards what's going on outside of us. Do you have a question?
I was just going to say, what if you don't think you're a robot?
Mm-hmm. You know, we're not. Then no. You're right. Do you want to give it? Absolutely. We're absolutely not robots, but I think any of us can relate to where it would be very natural. It's a very normal human experience that if someone says something hurtful to us, we can then brood on it for the rest of the day and allow that person to have control over us. So obviously we're saying this without any judgment, but we wouldn't have to all be here discussing this if it wasn't a normal human way of interfacing with the world. But when we can be able to take our control back, when we're able to realize the realization that, oh, I think I'm in robot mode. Like, I think I'm allowing someone on the outside or circumstances on the outside to control me in some way, that can be a very, very big turning point to being able to tune back into our own empowerment. So some of you would have heard this from me before, but absolutely bears repetition, even if you have, is that I have a little clock here. I imagine each of us as having our own house. I hope people on Zoom can see as well. This is metaphorically speaking, that each of us has we're our own people. We have our own space. When we were created by Hashem, He gave us permission. He gave us a value that means that we have our own space. We are our own people. We have our own power. And all the time that we are focused on being in our house, on being grounded, on catching the empowerment, the energy that Hashem is giving us, and then dealing from our house outwards towards different people, towards different circumstances, that's when we're going to be successful. Now, often we're not even aware that we're doing that. We're just with that person we're talking to, making that decision, going along our lives, doing what we need to be doing, and we just are in our house. Our house is portable. It comes with us. It comes with us everywhere, that in every moment we have power coming to us from the outside. So if I say to you, if I say to you, my mobile's losing charge and I've got loads of calls to make and I've got messages I need to send, what would you say to me? Charge it, right? Charge it. Put it in. Put a charger in the wall. In the plug in the wall. Plug your mobile in. Get the charge back up, and you can make all the calls you need to make and send all the messages you need to send. So sometimes, without realizing it, we can start to feel like we're losing charge. We can start to feel that sense of incompetence or inconfidence or disempowerment or inferiority. And when we can realize that the same way that when we're charging something, we are tuning in to an energy that's coming from the outside into this building. So if I would put a charger in, I would be charging into something that's coming from outside, and I'm then reaping the benefits of that. In exactly the same way, we all have pipes coming to our house with the resilience, the physical and emotional energy for anything that we need to be dealing with outside, or anyone we need to be dealing with outside of our house. So that's a really important part of a really important foundation of being able to be grounded. So instead of what I call being on the streets and losing our sense of empowerment and groundedness, if we're able to tune back in to the trust that we are resilient by nature. In every moment we are being created resilient and wise and valuable. So when we're able to walk around with that knowledge and tune back in when we start to feel ourselves losing the sense of that, that's the good news. It's not something we have to create. It's something that we have to allow ourselves to tune back into this resilience that we have. So again, those of you who've heard me speak before will know that I really love hearing or reading in Sfarim, in Jewish books, very, very documented principles, emotional, psychological principles, because it really reinforces to me, that the Torah is not just a whole set of rules. The Torah is a way of life, that it gives us a guide to all aspects of life, the psychological aspect obviously being a very fundamental one. So I came across in a sefer called Siftei Chaim, written by Reb Chaim Friedlander. He talks about menuchas hanefesh, which is the Hebrew phrase for serenity, peace of mind. And he gives 3 very clear principles of how a person can tune in to this serenity. And he says, if a person can see themselves as the only person in the world, whatever he's doing, what this present moment as the only moment, and the purpose of the moment as the only purpose, that is when he will find serenity. It's an absolute principle, like 2 and 2 equals 4. This is a principle. And we're going to build that into our analogy with the house, that when a person can be grounded in themselves, when he says the only person in the world, he's obviously not saying it in a selfish way. It's not, I'm the only person, blinds down, blinkers on, and ignore anyone else. Of course not. But it means that when a person can be grounded in themselves and valuable and dignified in their own, in the person that they are, the person that they've been created, and when they're able to focus on their responsibility and their choices outwardly, that is when they will find menuchas nefesh in the face of whatever is going on the outside. So it's not that the outside is going to determine our level of peace of mind. It's that our level of groundedness is going to determine our peace of mind. So if you think about it, near coach savers, there's a speed sign that flashes, and if it's flashed for any of you, but it flashes if you're going a bit fast, right? Sometimes you cannot realize you're going a bit fast, and the speed sign, that's its role is to tell you that, by flashing that you are. And in the same way, Hashem's given us an inbuilt system that flashes, that lets us know when we are stepping out of our empowerment. And that flashing sign is disempowerment. As soon as we feel any form of disempowerment, any form of feeling where we're just not feeling so energized, motivated, confident, valuable, secure, that is our sign that in some way we have inadvertently stepped out of what we can control and what our focus can be. and we have started to drift out of that. So going through each of them, okay, so I think it's useful to know, it's a bit like, you know, in a sat nav when it says make a U-turn, right? So as soon as we realize we've gone off track, that's, like we said before, a very important part of being able to reroute. So when we realize that, oh, I'm not feeling so great, I'm feeling disempowered, or after a conversation with someone, it can happen. You know, you walk away with a niggling feeling, like it shows that we're getting pulled out in some way. And that's an opportunity for us to then zone in on these 3 areas that we're talking about today, to see if we can find, where have we got distracted? Where have we got distracted in a way that we're not feeling home? We're not feeling in our house. You know, if I remember during the winter, I saw a very unfortunate homeless person as I was in town. And I was thinking, it was freezing, it was a really cold day. And I was thinking, you know, it could even be that we're both actually in the same level of cold right in this moment. But I know that I have a warm house to go back to. And in the same way, if we all get cold, we all get emotionally cold, we all have moments, shaky moments or moments of insecurity. But when we can know that we're not homeless, we have a home to go back to, we have a place inside us always, a real place inside us always, where we can go back to that place and we can get warm again, that can help us even in the moments when we do feel on the street. Okay, so let me ask you now, what would you say are emotions that we can feel when we get stuck in someone else's house? Okay, so this is our house and this is anyone else's, okay? It could be a spouse, it could be a friend, it could be a child, it could be a co-worker, anyone else, okay? Any other person. The important part to realize is that there is a space between my house and anyone else's, and that space is what we're saying to do with the robot as well, right? That space means we are not robots, we are people. And yes, there might be things coming from this house, things that are not always easy coming from this house. It does not mean everyone's perfect. What it does mean is that we always have the autonomy, we always have the ability to be able to tune in to what's going on for me. So what do we feel when we get stuck in other people's houses? Any suggestions? Inadequate is a great one, yeah. So that could be when we're pressing our nose against the window of someone else's house and saying, oh, they're just so amazing at that, you know, or oh, I can't manage that, and how do they make it look so effortless, right? That's a sign, that's a very good example of how we can get pulled out. Now, what's interesting to realize, building into this analogy, is that right very, very close by, we have an exquisite house too. We're just not in it. We're just not in it. So we've turned our back to our house, and then we're going to see the other person and feel so intimidated by them and so in awe. And I don't mean, obviously, we want to respect other people and want to appreciate their qualities, but this inadequacy, that is just the right word for it, this inadequacy that we can feel is not because we don't have a good package, it's because we've just turned our back to the package that we have. Anything else? Any other feelings that we can feel when we get pulled out of being grounded in me and who I am and my package of strengths and weaknesses and my feelings? How can we feel when we get pulled out?
Jealousy.
Yeah, jealousy is a big one. Yeah, jealousy is, again, when we press our nose against someone else's house and we're looking at what they have, and all the time we are turning our back on our own blend of strengths. Yes.
What about if the person in the other house makes you feel that your home isn't as nice as theirs? And that's
a great question. Okay, so I'm gonna pick up on the makes us feel, okay, because when we can say that person made me feel inadequate, we're handing the remote to them and we're saying, oh, there you go, you can manufacture my emotions, you have the control, right? What we want to do is to be aware of how we feel, because we are human beings and we have the whole wealth of emotion, and none of this is about saying that we have to be above feeling criticized or inadequate or judged or hurt by something that comes to someone else, what it is saying is that when we own it, instead of saying they made me feel, which the focus is on them, I'm feeling like they can overpower me, it's I feel hurt by that conversation, or I feel hurt by them not answering my call or not coming to that event or whatever it is. That then means that we are home. Being home means that it's safe to feel anything that we're feeling in relation to another person. But the question is, are we feeling a victim of that, or are we owning it and being in our own house about it? That's going to be a huge difference. So when the focus is all on you and them, and I can't believe it, even though those conversations can be so fun, you know, to just like, I can't believe it, and how could they do it, and you know, but at the end of the day, it means we're getting stuck in someone else's house, and we will feel that. We will come away from a conversation where it's all about the other person and how could they do that, or how could they say that, and we don't feel better. And the reason is because we're not home. The only place we're going to feel better is when we're home and we're grounded. If we connect this to the Megillah, we have Hormone in the Megillah, who was incredibly successful, incredibly wealthy, a huge position of power, second to the king. And he said the words, not all of this is worthless to me, because Mordechai, because one Jew will not bow down to me, none of it's worth anything. That's a person who was living on the street. He wasn't in his house. He wasn't able to savor and appreciate what he did have. He was always looking outside to what he didn't have. And I believe him when he says that he really couldn't appreciate any of it. I believe it because that's how we feel when we shine the focus outside on what we don't have, rather than inside on what we do have, or on our feelings inside about what we don't have. That's true. That also, okay? So so inside our house, there's absolute opportunity for us to find things hard, or for us to have loss, or to struggle. But again, are we going to own that struggle? Or are we just going to point the finger outside and say, that person did this to me, or that person drives me mad? And that's going to be a very big decider on whether we're able to retain our empowerment.
Deborah,
Yes.
so you're saying about becoming a victim, right?
Yeah.
But as far as I'm aware, when you are a victim, you obviously are looking for rescue, like in the and then you're not going to look within, because you're a victim, you're not looking in. Once the rescue comes to help you, it's then easier to look in, or not really?
If it's support, it can help you. You know, it's like I just finished a counselling session with quite a long-term counselling session with a very, very special girl who's had a lot of struggles, and what she's now seeing in herself, I saw in her from the beginning. The value, the worth, the strength, the resilience, the wisdom, she couldn't see it herself. So sometimes we do need other people to see for us what we can't necessarily see for ourselves right then. But that's not necessarily a rescuer. That means that as soon as we're able to own our own feelings about things and what's hard for us, then we can reach out for support. But it doesn't mean at any point that girl had to be out of her house and she had to be in my house. No, absolutely not. Like we want her to be empowered in her house. We want to take support into our house from the outside in, rather than us jumping into the person who's supporting us. That's the balance that we want to get. I don't know if any of you have heard of very famous tennis players, Venus and Serena Williams, very, very talented tennis players, very close sisters. So I was listening to an interview that someone had with them about how they feel when they're competing against each other. So they could be in, really head to head, because they're both excellent and pretty much top in the world in women's tennis. How do they deal with that? Because they're really close and very protective of each other. And I think it was Serena who said, and it just impacted me, these words. I'm going to share them with you because it shines a light on what we're talking about today. She said, the way that they're trained is that it's not the person you're playing against, It's about staying in the game and giving your best shot. And I thought that's exactly what we're saying here. That's exactly what Menuchas Nefesh means. It means that we are, that when we get too stuck on the other person, rather than our learning and our process and our opportunity from whatever shot's coming from the other house, that means that we're going to lose the focus of the game. If she would get stuck on, oh no, I feel bad, she needs to win, but I need to win to keep in, to keep in the game, and she would really lose her ability to give that best shot. So when we get too stuck on the other person, the person that shot's coming from, that's going to distract us. And that's exactly what Rav Friedlander is guiding us to. We need to see ourselves as the only person in the world, meaning that we need to focus on what's mine here. What do I feel? What do I need? And what is my best choice from me outwards? And that's really what it very much ties in. That really is what spiritual living is about. It's about what's the message for me. Nothing happens by chance. So if something's happening from someone else, it does not mean that it's okay. But that is between them and Hashem. And what I want to focus on is my response to it. It's like I had a very difficult email from a client's mother. Obviously, I'm not going to give any details, but a client's mother of a girl I helped a lot, and she was accusing me of, I guess I understand, she felt threatened by my position. But it was hurtful, and I was very kind of stuck on her, and how could she say that? Doesn't she realize what I gave her daughter and all of this? And then I was like, okay, well, 1 second, what's mine here? Okay, I feel hurt, feel a certain bristling injustice, and then what's my response? What's my learning? And I thought to myself, Hashem's giving us all the time, and sometimes we can complain towards him, and he's the one who's giving, and we can have accusations. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Didn't you realize this? Didn't you realize that? And I thought, you know what? It's an opportunity for me to be humble. It's not easy, but it's an opportunity for me to be humble and to work on my humility. So not so focused on her and how could she say this and does she not, all of that started to quieten down, and it started to be much more of a focus on what is my learning here? What's this opportunity that I can exercise my own humility muscle, to be able to be humble and just accept this. And then I also did write an email back, very respectful. It felt the right thing to do, and I just wrote an email back, and that, it just felt the right thing to do. Again, from my house outwards, such a different shift. And I know it's a small example, it's not the most intense emotional example ever, but the same principles will apply to any example, because we all have people and circumstances in our lives, and and when we're able to focus on what's coming from inside towards that, that's where we're always going to find our empowerment. If you think about the war in Ukraine, like I was feeling so, I guess, out of control with it, and so upset about it, and quite stuck, I suppose, in the houses of the people who are going through what they're going through. And then again, there's an opportunity to go back to my house and say, what can I do? Give money, daven for them. Obviously, there's been a collection of supplies as well. Like that, people feel good, and that's the reason why, because that's where we find our empowerment. We can't control the war, but we can control what our learning is. Like sometimes when I'm driving, I'll stop to let someone go past. Not necessarily, okay, I hope it's helpful to them, but it's for me that I'm exercising my muscle of giving, of not just being in my day and ignoring other people's needs around, there are many opportunities. So if we're able to see, if we're feeling impatient with someone, if we're able to see, instead of, oh, why are they so annoying, it's this is an opportunity for my patience, that can have a very, very different ring to it. Again, it takes us out of victim and into empowerment. So that's our first element, is is of being present to ourselves as people. Then in terms of being in the now, it's interesting because we're looking into houses for the summer, for the holidays. And I saw this really nice house in the middle of nowhere. Like if you see like an aerial view picture of it, it's literally like green all around and this one building in the middle. And I thought to myself, like, that's really what being in the now means. It means that we are present, and out and around this moment is open space, like a space of anything that's happened until now and anything that may happen from now onwards. It's like its own island. When we're able to tune into that, it really helps us to channel this energy. So how can we feel, like we said before, how can we feel when we get pulled into the past? What type of emotions will come and pull us out of the freshness of this moment? What would we say to that? What can we feel? Anxious, right? Anxious, memories coming in, sadness, things that are hard to process, guilt.
Low self-esteem.
Low self-esteem, absolutely. Guilt is a huge one, okay? We can feel guilty about things that we really did that weren't right, or we made wrong judgments, or we weren't aware of certain circumstances that caused us to cause people hurt. And sometimes we can feel guilty about things that were never in our control in the first place. If we really look at ourselves, we can see that we can feel guilty. And this is an opportunity for us to be in the present moment and let Hashem hold anything else, anyone else, and anything else. You know, my kids on Friday night, they come into the kitchen and say, Mommy, I want to help you, I want to take things in. So I'll give them like the salad, you know, I'll give them light things. Like my big boys, I'll give them the chicken or, you know, the potatoes, like the heavier serving dishes. And I was thinking that to myself the other night. I was feeling quite overwhelmed, and I was thinking, you know, I can only let myself be in the present. I can only let go when I know that I've got Hashem's good, strong hands there for me to let him hold it. That's the only way that I can let go and let myself be present, is when I'm able to clear my mind of the people and situations and past and future and let him hold it. It reminds me of the story with my Batsheva when she was about 3. She had a handful of marbles and she kept dropping one, and when she dropped one, she'd try and pick it up, and then she'd drop another one, and she's getting all frustrated. So I said to her, Shevs, put the marbles in my hands. You go to the kitchen and get a plastic cup, and then we'll put the marbles in and everything will be fine. So off she went to get her plastic cup. She came back, put them in, all good. And I was thinking afterwards, that's exactly what Hashem's saying to me. In my own mind, I'm trying to hold too much. I'm worrying about people, and I'm thinking about past, and I'm overwhelmed by so many things to do. And Hashem's saying to me, put them in my hand, I'll hold it for you. All you need to do is go and get your plastic cup. All you need to do is focus on what's yours now. What's your purpose in this moment? And you'll always be able to do that because that's within our control. What's your purpose now? And that's when we're able to really get into a very nice momentum. So sometimes what can be helpful is to breathe. Okay, I know this is all the rage, right? The yoga and the breathing, and it's really, if we think about it, the word neshama is the same word as neshima, which is the word neshama, soul, is the same word as neshima, which is breath, because that really is our soul. Our soul is where Hashem breathes into us a part of himself. That is our essence, is a part of Hashem. So when we're able to breathe in, it's a physical representation of a spiritual reality that we are taking in Hashem's energy through us. And that's why we can trust ourselves. And that's why we can value ourselves as people, because that is our essence. I was reading up about this on the Ish website, and there's a rabbi called Rabbi Chaim Levi, and he wrote, God's breath, your essence, not bad. right? Like it's if we really think about it, it's really the foundation of our own serenity, our own self-esteem, is that he is replenishing us in every moment. As we know, we're breathing in every moment, there's a freshness to it. And with that breath is coming all the resilience and resources that we need for whatever's going on beyond us. That's the, now what's also interesting is, I know this obviously from my my counseling role, is that a very good way to calm ourselves down is to take in a shorter breath and breathe out a longer one. So we could take in to, let's say, the count of 4, and then breathe out to the count of 6. And to me, it really fits into what we're saying in this year, that we're able to take in the freshness and the hope and the trust and the resilience and the wisdom, and we're able to breathe out just that little bit more, so that by the end of the breath, we've let go of more than we had in that previous moment. So we're able to breathe in the freshness and breathe out the resentment and the stuckness and the fear and the anxiety and the inconfidence. We're able to breathe that out and let that go. Yeah.
Being in the moment, isn't it also thinking at that moment in time of your future vision as well? So
Yes.
you can't forget the future.
Great question. So that really brings us to the next topic, which is the purpose of the moment. Okay, so thank you for that question. The question being, but sometimes we do have to plan. Sometimes we've got to sit down and write a list. We've got to make a future decision about something. Absolutely. But let's contrast when that's niggling at the back of our mind all the time. I've got to do that, I've got to do that. And, oh, what am I going to do about that? Right? To when it's the purpose of the moment. And it's the purpose to sit down and have that sometimes difficult conversation, or to make a plan for something. When that's the purpose, that's amazing. That's totally in line with catching that momentum, that energy coming through us. When it's that our mind is flitting from one thing to the other, like we're in, I'm sure we've all had that experience where we're talking to someone and they're just not there, right? You know, I'm sure they can see us and they can, but all we've done the same thing, you know, role reversed, right? Where someone's there who we really like and care about, but our mind is miles away. So that's really what this is about. This is about becoming more mindful to what is the purpose of now. And sometimes the purpose of now is to plan for the future. Sometimes the purpose of now is to process the past also, right? So when I sit and obviously in my role as a therapist and help people work through their past, they're no longer in their childhood home or in that car accident or whatever it is that they're processing. Of course, they're sitting in a safe room, but the role of that moment, the purpose of that moment is to process the past. But again, that's very, very different to when those memories are just niggling at the back, keeping them up at night, disturbing them, being able to enjoy things. That's when it might be a realization that there needs to be a focused way of tuning into it. What's also important about the purpose of the moment is like that. I heard a story from an analogy rather from Rav Noah Weinberg's, that's how, and he says, imagine a basketball game. So you've got all these guys running around and they're really hot and they'll be at it for a while and they're all tired and achy and they're just having the best time, right, playing this basketball game. Imagine if you take the ball away. You know, after 1 minute, they're going to be like, oh, my leg hurts. I'm so hot. Oh, I just can't do this anymore. So he said that when we have purpose, when there's meaning, when we find meaning in things and purpose in things, then even though the going can be tough and the game that we're playing can be hard and sometimes the teammates can be challenging to play with as well, but it means that we're going to be in that flow of energy. So putting the purpose back into things makes it a very, very different experience. I was sitting learning actually through this Reb Chaim Friedlander piece with my 17-year-old son, Ari, and it was really nice because he's quite psychologically minded and he really enjoyed it. He could also translate one or two of the words I wasn't sure of as well. And then my son, Ellie, had bashed himself or whatever it was, and he was crying, he needed my attention. And I just said, that like it could look like the holier purpose of the moment is to sit there learning through this, this wisdom, but that's not true. The purpose of that moment was to stop learning and to focus on obviously giving compassion and a hug and whatever else Ellie needed. So the purpose of the moment is not, it's not on paper. It's in that moment, what does Hashem want me to be doing? How can I best give to that person I'm with? Or how can I best connect to him? Like that's always going to be, and it can be very practical. But if we're able to put purpose into the practical, it can, like we said before, it can really lift and allow us to stay in the game for a lot longer than when that ball's out of the picture and it's just trudging through hot and tired and achy. So putting the purpose back in is going to be a very important element. The story I heard from Rabbi Yoel Gold about an Israeli army commander called Effie Eitan, and he went on a fishing trip to Alaska. So some of you might have heard this, but it bears repetition. So he wanted to go into a really isolated area. He'd been in the army for 30 years. He wanted a bit of peace and quiet. So they flew to Alaska, and then they flew to an area, quite a quiet area called King Solomon. And from there, they got a propeller plane to this area of 6 small houses where they were going to be on this fishing trip. So the guide said to them, the only thing you need to be concerned about, the only thing you need to be aware of in terms of safety is the grizzly bear. Okay, that there are bears in the area, and you just need to be aware of them and obviously of how to deal if one of them comes up. So he said he was sitting there, absolutely idyllic scenery, beautiful, quiet, and he hears a rustling in the bushes. And the guy had said to him, if you encounter a bear, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. You look at the bear and you say to the bear, "Hey bear, this is my space. I intend to fish here." So Effie was laughing. He's like, seriously, a bear? Like that's going to work? Whatever. Anyway, so he's sitting there, wrestling behind, turns around, huge grizzly bear. Okay, this guy who's been in the army, nothing compares to this huge grizzly bear standing there. So he looks at him and he thought, okay, well, I'm not going to run because bears can run 30 miles an hour. He's going to outdo me. I can't climb a tree. They can climb faster. So he did what he'd been told to do. That was the only thing he could think. So he said to him, "Hey bear, this is my place. I intend to fish here." And the bear gets up on his hind legs, 9 foot, probably about as tall as this room. And he is shaking, really scared. And he thought, okay, I'm just going to say it again. So he says it again, "Hey bear, this is my place. I intend to fish here." And the bear gets down and starts to swim downstream. So when he came back, he said to the guys, "What is the deal here? How does this work?" Like it really worked. The very thing that I laughed at. So he said such an amazing thing. He said that a bear sees a human being as the crown of creation. So there's all the other animals which it will not have any qualms about attacking, but a human being is the crown of creation and they will not attack unless a human being starts to act like an animal by running, screaming, climbing. That's when they'll attack. So when you were able to stand your ground and speak with dignity and confidence as a human being, it backs off, right? And what Rabbi Gold says, which I think is such an amazing point, he says that Shlomo HaMelech says, if a strong spirit overwhelms you, don't move from your place. Stand your ground. So in the context of what we've spoken about today, there are going to be things that come from the outside, circumstances, difficult behaviors or reactions from other people, or the pain that other people are going through. You know, that's going on the outside. But if we're able to stand our ground and not move from our own empowerment, then we'll be able to stay grounded and be able to deal well with the bears, the circumstances or relationships that are going on around us. So like I always finish my share, those of you who have been here before will know, that I like to just do half a minute of just reflecting on what's being said today. I try and throw out lots of different points. Obviously, we're all in our own lives. So anything that you would want to take from what we've said today that applies to you, that you think that resonated with you. So just half a minute to think about that before we end. Okay, are there any questions before we finish?